Helps if you unmute. There we go. Good morning. Welcome to the last week of instruction. Hopefully you guys aren't too panicked right now. Certainly, hopefully you're not too panicked for this class, but in general, this is kind of welcome to the end. So I know the stress levels are high. I'm going to make it as clean and easy as possible, but at the same time, we obviously have to push ahead because we've got one more week to go. In terms of your portfolios, remember this week during our check-ins, I really want to see your portfolios. So some of you weren't quite ready last week. Hopefully this week you've had enough time to put some more things in. You really don't want to leave it till the last second. So working on it now is a good idea. Getting feedback from me today or on Wednesday is awesome. It's certainly something that'll be useful for you going forward. So I really encourage you to come check-ins and show me your portfolio. So that's what we'll be doing in check-ins. We've got two last pieces of exercises. We've got 128 today and 129 on Wednesday. Today we're going to be doing sections in SketchUp and then collaging in Photoshop. And then on Wednesday we'll do perspectives and we'll collage those in Photoshop. Both are in SketchUp. Those are components potentially of your assignment 106. And remember that assignment 106 is due on this Friday. So I have that a little bit early because next Monday is when the portfolios are due. So I'm staging it a little bit. So I know that with the perspective, we're doing it on Wednesday and you only have a couple days to turn around and have it turned in on Friday at midnight, but you're picking 3 of the 4. So if you already did your elevations, your plan, and your section today, and then you do the perspective and it doesn't turn out that well, remember you could turn in the first 3 because only 3 of the 4 are required for your assignment 106. So I think we can get there. That then gives you your assignment 106 is done, due, turned in. You'll get your peer review comments for that. And then we will have everything due on Monday, your portfolio by midnight. I've gotten a couple emails from some people or a couple messages in Canvas about their schedules for finals week. Remember, if you are, have a schedules of finals week where all your tests are on Monday, or you have a late night test on Monday or something like that, and you need a little bit of an extension of the portfolio, set it up with me ahead of time, and I'm okay with that. But for everybody else, it's due on Monday at midnight. If you want to resubmit any assignments, anything that you didn't like that you want to regrade, or you're missing pieces, maybe it's you were missing a certain part of what we were supposed to turn in or whatever, those are all due on Monday as well. So get those turned in, and then we'll go from there. So the idea is to wrap everything up and then give you the rest of the finals week to do your other tests, etc. So hopefully that's clear and gives you a nice roadmap of where we're going. Today, we're gonna, like I said, work on SketchUp once again. Let me go ahead and share my screen here. And give me just a second to get organized.
Professor?
Sure.
So I have a question. So the peer review for the assignment 106 is also due on Monday?
On Monday, yes. Although, realistically, if that's spilled over by a couple days, I'm not going to grade everything on Tuesday. So,
okay.
If you do it and turn it in on Tuesday, that's fine. I would encourage you to get it done because you've got so many other things going on.
Okay.
But I will probably do grading on, well, I usually do grading on Wednesday, but I know I have some people that are waiting until Friday because they got permission to wait till Friday. So, if you're still turning in a few miscellaneous things, as long as you tell me so that I know it's coming, I'll wait for you, but absolutely nothing later than Friday.
Okay.
But send me an email and let me know, oh, I'm planning on doing this, so I'm looking for it.
Okay, so if we submit something later than Monday, we're gonna email you.
Right, exactly. Just send me an email saying, hey, I really want to do this, or I want to do that, or I want to do this again, or whatever, and then I'll know to be looking for it.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Best thing to do is to communicate, always. Perfect. All right, so I'm back in SketchUp once again. I'm looking at the plan view from last time. Remember, we saved the scene in SketchUp. I'm going to jump back into a perspective view. I already have one saved here just so that we can get our view back. Now, today what we're going to be working on is a section. And a section is actually one of the most important drawings that architects do because it's the best at really understanding the space. And I think this is something that's an interesting concept when you're first learning about architecture and you're first learning how to design, in that when you're beginning, generally you start with a plan and you start to say, okay, well, how do these rooms arrange? And that's what we did in AutoCAD, where we said, okay, I have this many square feet, I have this many square feet. How do I start to establish what that's like? As you become better at design, as you become a better architect or an architecture student, you start to, instead of thinking just in plan, because of course plan and room sizes and stuff are important, but you also start to think in section, because section is about the experience of being in the space. That's what we're showing in a section drawing. So you have an understanding of how tall the ceilings are. What does the space feel like to be in, rather than how's it laid out on the ground? Because we don't ever actually experience the building in plan view. We walk through the building in section view. So as you look around at your room, some architect or the person who designed the space understood what it felt like to be in the room, and they conveyed that message through a section drawing. So we didn't do section drawings in your AutoCAD section of the class. In that little module, we didn't do it, but we are going to do it as part of this piece of the course. The nice thing is that creating a section is really easy in SketchUp once you have your model kind of solidified here. So you have to think about what view you want to take a section of. And for me, taking a section such that I look out the windows, so taking a section looking that way, is going to be far more valuable than one looking the other direction, because I'm going to get a better sense of the space. So as we did last time, I'm going to use the section tool, just like I did with the plan, only this time it's going to be in the vertical position. So to show that section tool, I'm going to show the large tool set. So let me go to View and then Toolbars, and I'm going to check the box for large tool set. And when I do that, I can then use this tool here, which is called the section plane tool. And we used that last class as well. And if I click on that section, you see that I can choose what orientation I want the plan. We did it in the blue direction when we did the plan, but I want it this time to be in either the green or the red direction. I don't know if I can get it in the red direction so you can see it. There you go. So for me personally, I think the green works best on my building, but you could very easily switch it to be in the red direction depending on what's happening in your particular building. So I'm going to go ahead and click to create this first section view. And so we can call this section 5 because that's the next in my number. And once I've done that, I can actually select the section. And if I zoom out, it's a little bit easier to see. You can see I have lots of sections here. And that section 5 there is selected, and I can use the move tool. Let me zoom back in so we can see it a little bit better, to control where it is in the building. Oops. Sorry, I didn't have it selected. I thought I did. I had section 4 selected. Select section 5. There we go. Let me use the move tool. I'll zoom back in. And now I can control where it's passing through the building. And this is actually really nice because you can get a good sense as you kind of go back and forth through the building of where is a good place to cut your view. So I have to decide in this, what do I really want to show? So the center here, this is my bathroom, and I've drawn nothing in the bathroom. This is a bedroom, and this is the windows. If I move forward and I get into where there's a hallway, that's kind of interesting, but I'm still just seeing the bedroom here, which is not too great. But if I keep going too much further forward, I'm going to end up without the middle hallway at all, and then I'm going to end up with two sides of the building. So something like that. And so again, cutting your section is about cutting through what's interesting. What do I want to show? And so this might not be bad because I'm showing an exterior space. If I came back here and I cut through this, that might not be bad either. I'm showing the bathroom and the buildings on either side, the bedroom and the main room. So any one of these would be acceptable. It's just a matter of deciding what view you want to see. I think I'm going to, because of the interest of this, I think I'm going to cut this section right here. And I think this will present some interesting views of my building. Now in this, it's a little bit difficult because I'm showing part of outside and part of inside, but let's go with it for right now. So in order to actually view this in its section view, I need to switch so that I'm looking straight at this building. So let's look at the front view. So I'll go to camera, standard views. Let's go to the front view. There we go. Now I'm looking at this. And remember, I don't want it to be in perspective. So I don't want these to be vanishing. So I'm going to go into my view menu, my camera menu, and I'm going to switch to parallel projection. And when I do that, then I can kind of zoom in here so that I can see my building. There it is. And so what we're seeing here is I've got my living room right there. I've got my bedroom right here. And I've got this outside space right here. So it's kind of the two rooms next to the outside courtyard space. And that's how I'm choosing to show the section. Again, if your building's different, you're going to cut through the building and decide what looks good for you. So now that I have this set up, I want to make sure that I'm saving this as a scene. So let's come over here to scenes. I'll click on add a scene.
I'm sorry, would you want shadows on or off?
I'm going to end up turning the shadows off. I just haven't gotten there yet. So let's look for wherever I saved it. Scene 18, there we go. I want to rename this scene. And we'll call this section, and I'm adding a spring of 2022 just so I know which one it is. And that lets me come back to this view again. And so remember, it's always important to save that scene so that we can come back to it again. So let's then start working on what the output should look like. So first thing is I'm going to turn off the shadows. So I can go up to my view. I'm going to turn off the shadows because we don't need the shadows. I'm going to turn off the section planes. I'm going to turn off the section, the axes, and I'm going to turn off the guides. And this is kind of giving me that color version, which was one of the options of export. So let's go ahead and export this one. So I'll go to File and then Export. We'll choose 2D Graphic. And let me put it in my OneDrive. Spring of 2022, and I'm going to append underscore color to this. Actually, it should probably say section. All right. Now under options here, we're going to increase the size. So small number here at about 3,000. And then we'll go ahead and say okay. And then export. Perfect. So I have my first one. Now let's go into my styles. And I'm going to go into my default styles, and I'll pick the hidden line style, which is this one. We're going to have to turn off the section fill because it decided to fill in that part of my building. So I wasn't seeing it. Let's continue. Let me turn off my section, my axes and my guides. Now we do have to keep these section cuts on because otherwise we get the whole building. So I'll go to view section cuts. We do want to make sure that section planes is turned off. So here I am. And let's go ahead and let's export this one. So I'll go to File, Export, 2D Graphic. And this will be lines. And there it is. Now, Michelle asked about the shadows. So in this particular view, if I go to turn on the shadows, so let me go to View and then Shadows, I'm not really getting much. The only shadow that I would really be seeing is maybe this one little bit of shadow here, because everything else is just passing into the building. So it's not that useful, but since we're here, we can go ahead and export it anyway. And again, that's really the only piece that I care about is the shadow on that wall. So let's go into my edit and I'm going to turn off the edges just so that we're getting just the shadows. And I'll go to File and then Export, 2D Graphic. And then we can call this Shadows. And we'll export.
So I have a question. So I was always wondering, even though we turn off the edges, this, we still can see the lines.
So when we cut a section through the building, we're going to see those lines no matter what. There's no way to get rid of the section line.
This is section 9.
Right.
Okay.
So there's no way to turn that off. So we're always going to see that. And that's because that's where it's cut through. If we went and we turned off the section cut, those lines would go away, but we'd only be getting the shadows on the whole building. Okay. So because we have the section cuts enabled, we're always going to see the black lines. And it's just an unfortunate consequence of using SketchUp.
Okay, thank you.
But good question, good question. So let's go back to my select menu here. I'm going to go into my sketchy edges and we'll do the airbrush. And again, I'm going to go to view and we're going to turn off the section planes. We're going to turn off the section fill. We're going to turn off the guides. We're going to turn off the shadows. And there it is. And we'll go to File, Export 2D Graphic. And we'll call this one Airbrush. And then the last one was the pen gray. And you get down here a little bit. Pen gray. And then we'll go to view and again, turn off the section planes, turn off the section fill, and turn off the guides. Now, for my particular model, the section fill doesn't work. In your model, maybe the section fill does work, in which case you can choose to leave it on. Let me go to File and then Export 2D Graphic on this one. And we'll call this one Pen. And then we'll click on Export. So these are all the exports that we need from SketchUp. Now it's time to open up Photoshop. And just like we've been doing, you can see that these last several exercises are a little bit repetitive. We're doing the same strategy each time. We'll give Photoshop just a little bit to open up here. All right, let's go ahead and open. And I'm going to start with the line drawings. All right, here's our spring, and let's open the lines first. Come on, Photoshop. There we go. And then we'll go ahead and place the rest of these in. So I'll go to File and then Place Embedded. And we'll drop in each of the rest of these. So we'll start with Airbrush here, and I'll click on Place. We'll confirm the placement. We'll go to File, Place Embedded. Drop in the color. We'll confirm it. We'll go to File and then Place Embedded. And we're going to do the pen. Confirm. File, Place Embedded. And we'll drop in the shadow. Now remember, for each one of these, we want to convert them into the blending mode of multiply. So I'll take the first one and we'll go to multiply. We'll go to the next one and we'll change it into multiply. Next one here, and we'll change that into multiply. This one into multiply. Our first one is on the background and it's locked. So let's right click on it and say layer from background so that it's editable. And we can call this one lines. All right, let's put the color at the bottom because we don't need to see that right now. Ultimately, we'll be turning it off. And then the rest of these, we can actually rename them. So this would be airbrush. This would be pen. And this would be shadows. Perfect. So now we've got everything layered up and we can start to work with this. So let's start with the shadows layer. I told you all the shadows don't matter except for that one little piece because that's the part that's outside the building. And so let's go ahead and clean that one up. So we can actually look just at the shadows right here. Let's zoom in. So Control plus to zoom in. There we go. And then I'm going to use my rectangular selection tool, and I'm basically going to delete everything except for that one little bit of shadow right there. So let's go there. This layer is currently a reference, so we need to rasterize it. So I'll right click on the shadows layer and choose rasterize layer. If I can find it, there it is. And then we can just delete, or we could paint over it in white. It really doesn't matter. So let's come in here. Let's get rid of that part. Let's get rid of that. Let's get rid of that. I'm going to press Control plus here because there's a tiny little bit of a black line that's left that I'd like to clean off. Got it right there. I'll clean that off. And now that I have just this piece left, you'll see when I turn back on the other pieces, we're getting the shadow right there only, which is ultimately our goal. So let's press Control 0 so we can zoom back out, and press Control plus, zoom in just a bit. So let's start to think about where the cuts would be and what needs to be filled in. So if we cut through a wall, we should fill it in. And so I'm going to go ahead and create a brand new layer. And let's rename this layer to be wall fill. And with that selected, actually, I'm going to change and select the lines layer and use the magic wand tool to select the parts of the walls that need to be filled in. I'll hold down Shift to select multiple parts, and I'll work my way around the building like this. So I've selected everything here. Now I have a little bit of a mistake in my drawing, and my windows are too low. So I actually need to fill all of this in as well. So let me hold down Shift, and we'll keep adding these to the selection. Like that. Now it looked like it accidentally selected some of this inside here. So I'm going to go back to the rectangular marquee, and instead of holding down Shift, I'm going to hold down Alt, and it's going to subtract from the selection. And I'll do a new selection that is right there to make sure that nothing is selected where those windows should be. There we go. And this sometimes is a good strategy. If I hold down Shift again with the rectangular marquee, I can make sure that I get everything underneath here. Like that. Now for sure that's selected. So now I want to move up to the wall fill layer, and then we'll go ahead with the paintbrush tool. I've got black as my foreground color. We can make my brush a little bit bigger. And I'm going to go ahead and change my hardness to be 100%. And we'll fill in what we've cut through. Now I fill it with black because we can always add an adjustment layer and change it away from being black to being gray or a different color if we want. But I'm starting with black. Sorry, Zoom's being a little bit jumpy for me here. Or maybe it's the remote desktop connection, but I have to be a little bit patient as I get through this. All right, so now I have that wall fill layer done. And if we were to press Control-0, we'd see what has been cut through, delineated by that black color. So now we need to establish the ground in this section view. So I'm going to create a new layer, and we'll call this one ground. And so here, just like the last time, we need to establish in the elevation view what the ground looks like. And so we could very easily use our rectangular marquee, and we could draw in the bulk of the ground. Oops. But we ultimately need a little bit of fluctuations in that ground, in that top edge of the ground. So we could use our lasso tool, hold down Shift to add to the selection, and then draw in some fluctuations along here. And then we'll come back and connect it together. Looks like I missed a little bit right there, so we need to fill that in about like that. So I'm not overly worried if it overlaps just a little bit. We'll use my paintbrush tool, again with black. Let's use the bracket tool to make that paintbrush much bigger. And we'll go ahead and we'll paint this in. And that's then giving us what the ground looks like at my building. Now, to me, I think using the grass brush along this edge also helps in the section cut just a bit. If you are unhappy with how your ground turned out, remember, you can always come back in and, for example, select a piece that you didn't like, and then you can delete it and change what the ground looks like. Yeah, if I didn't like that hill, for example, right, I can delete that out like that. So it really just becomes, what feels right to you. That peak looks a little bit hard, so let's select that, and then we'll delete that as well. So you can just play around with what looks right. I'm going to go back to the clone stamp tool now, and we're going to choose the grass brush. So let me click this arrow here, and let me find the grass brush. I have to load the legacy brushes. So we'll go ahead and say OK. And then you guys hold on one second. All right, back. Sorry about that. So I have my legacy brushes. We'll expand that, and we'll scroll down here. And sorry, it's under General. This window's too small, I can't see it. There we go. Let's look in default brushes. And it's about halfway down, should be the grass brush. There it is. And we use this grass brush right there. So the way this works, remember, is that we're going to hold down Alt to copy from, and then we'll come up here to start to create our grass. And we'll add that little bit of grass there. And I just kind of work my way to the end. Now, if you end up getting cut off like that, Remember, you have to resample from a little bit further over, and then you can finish like that. We'll come over to this side. I'll hold down Alt, and we're going to copy this right along there. I'm going to hold down the space bar to move over so we can see that edge. And I'll keep adding the grass along here. Like that. So when I'm all done, we can press Control-0 to zoom so that we see everything. And you can see that I now have established a rather nice sectional line drawing of my view. And I've done that relatively easily coming out of my SketchUp model, which is ultimately what our goal is. Now we can start to take and evolve this a little bit further, and we could add, for example, a background image or textures or colors or lighting, etc. So I'm going to go through those options, but this is getting you to the start of this, where we have a nice line drawing. So let's go ahead and find some kind of a background image. I'm going to pull up here a Creative Commons image search. We could just do images.google.com. Helps if I can type. And we'll call this Yosemite Meadow. And this is similar to what I did in my other view. So like this one, that's a movie. That's not going to help me. Let's keep looking here. You don't really want something with the path in it. So maybe something like this. We'll open that in a new tab. This one's not bad. All right, let's go ahead and visit this one. There we go. I'm not a huge fan of those cars in the background, but we could probably make this one work. Let's right click and let's save image as. And I'm going to put that on my my OneDrive. Sorry, wrong folder. And let's come down here. And let's go ahead and save that. And then I can bring that image into my file here. So let's zoom out. I'll go Control- a couple times. And we'll go to File and then Place Embedded. We'll click Place. And then we're going to start to adjust the size. Remember, we want to keep it in proportion. So I'm not going to hold down Shift. It's habit to hold down Shift because in Illustrator, you hold down Shift. So we want it to be large enough to cover up our image. Let's shrink that back down a little bit. And then we need to sort out where is our horizon line going to be. So let's make this a little bit transparent so we can kind of see what it looks like against our building. And we want to think about where this belongs. So if it's up too high like that, it's not going to look right. So we're going to shrink that down a little bit more. And somewhere in there is probably about right. I might go a little bit lower, maybe right about there. Now notice that the top of our drawing is being cut off. I'm going to go ahead and commit to it. And it's kind of sad to cut that part of the drawing off. So we can actually expand our canvas. So if I go up here to my image and I go to canvas size, I'm going to choose my anchor in the bottom middle, and then we'll increase the height. Right now it's at 3,000. Let's go to 4,000. We can always crop it again afterward. And that's going to give me more space up here. So let's change this back to 100%. Then you can see it. And then we can come back into the crop, and we can actually crop this back down to what the size of the image would be, like that. So we'll commit to it. Now it's time to start arranging this and cutting this out. So obviously the background is going to go at the very bottom. So we'll drop it down here. But we need to cut out that part of our lines drawing to show it. So we'll add a mask. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the eyedropper tool. I have lines selected here. I'm going to select the background, and it actually might be even easier to use the color as a selection tool, but the lines will probably work. And if I were to add a mask here, that's fine, and we'd be becoming transparent for the background. But I also have to think about where in the building do I see all the way through. So for example, I see all the way through here. All of these windows, I'm going to see all the way through. So I need to make sure that I'm selecting the windows. I got to get these little windows up at the top. These are windows. Like that. Once I have all of those selected, then we can come over here and click on the Add Layer Mask. And again, this is on the Lines layer. And it should have cut that out for us. That's good. We need it on the rest of these layers as well. So let's hold down the Alt key and drag this mask onto the airbrush, drag the mask onto the pen, drag the mask onto the shadows. And we should be seeing it right now. Oh, I did it backwards. My mistake. So let's Control Z. I didn't catch that. There we go. Let me select inverse. Inverse. There we go. And I want to make sure that this upper part is not selected as well. So let's click on the rectangular marquee tool. I'm going to hold down the Alt key to subtract from the selection. There we go. So that's not there. And then we'll click on the Add Layer Mask. There we go. Now we're starting to see through this particular building into what's behind. So to me, this just got really hard to see. It's hard to tell what's my building and what's the background. So I need to kind of modify the background to think about how does this showcase what's happening in the background a little bit better. So one of the easy strategies would be to take the background and adjust that opacity so that it's much, much lighter. That lets my drawing show. So that's certainly a strategy. Another strategy might be to take the background and change the color so that it's not a fully saturated color and make it black and white, for example. So let's add a black and white adjustment layer to it. So I'll go to Layer, New Adjustment Layer, and let's do a channel mixer. I'm going to call it BW. Say OK. And remember, I'm going to tie it just to the meadow scene. So I'll go up to my layer menu and choose Create Clipping Mask or press Control-Alt-G. And then we're going to change this to be in monochrome. It becomes black and white. And I still think we need to adjust the opacity down a little bit. Wonder if I can adjust the fill down so that, yeah, sorry, wrong. It need to be on the layer itself. Yeah, it's relatively consistent. Stick with the opacity. And we'll go to maybe something about like that. Okay, so I'm trying to make my drawing show up against this background a little bit better. Okay, so now that I have that kind of showing up, let's think about how do we want to show these windows? Well, maybe the windows really shouldn't be in the black and white, and then that would accentuate the windows. So let's use our lines layer with the magic wand to select all the windows again. Let me press Control+ to zoom in. Sorry, Control+. Ah, darn it. Mac Windows coming to get me. All right, Control+, there we go. And let's select the windows. So I'm going to select, hold down Shift, just the windows. Like that. So I'm selecting just those windows. Then I'm going to go onto the black and white adjustment layer. And on the layer mask, which again is created, I'm going to apply where I don't want this to occur. So I'll use my paintbrush with black and I'm going to paint over those windows. And you can see that now I've brought the color back in. So if I were to zoom out, Control 0, right? We have a black and white here, but we're seeing color through the windows. So it's just a strategy for showing what's happening in the windows. The alternative to that would be to leave the background in color, but then to tint all of the windows. So let me show you that one real quick as a strategy. I personally like the black and white, but I want to show you multiple options here. So let me hold down Shift. And we'll select these windows again. Like that. So I have all of those selected. I'm going to go up to Layer, and we're going to go to New Adjustment Layer, and I'm going to do a Hue and Saturation adjustment. It's either going to be that or a color balance. Let's try Hue and Saturation. And I want this to be below the lines layer, so it's right there. And now whatever I do is going to affect just those areas. So let's adjust the hue so that it's more, that's a little too purple. And you're going to have to play around with what's the right. That's too green. We just need to make it a little bit more blue, maybe like that. We could increase the saturation to make those stand out a little bit more. You know, the idea is that you're trying to mimic what the windows look like. To me, this is less effective than the previous strategy where we have the black and white with the color in the windows. But again, that's just a personal preference for what looks good to you. Okay, so we have this established. I don't really have a good wall to splash light on, but I'll show you how to do the lights if I had a wall that was concrete. Well, maybe I could, trying to think here. Let me take this wall on the end. Oops, let me go back to my lines here. And I'm going to get rid of the background here. I'm going to make it solid just so that you can see this when I put the light on it. Let's go back to my lines layer, and let's go to my paintbrush. And we'll paint those in black. Just paint those in white. There we go. Okay, so we're back to where those are solid. Now, if I wanted to mimic light, we can add a new layer. I can call this lighting. And on the lighting layer, we're going to change the blending mode down here to soft light. I'm going to choose the paintbrush tool, and I'm going to pick a color that is kind of a yellowish color, kind of a yellowish orange, maybe something like that. On my brush here, I'm going to change my hardness to 0, and I need to make my size much smaller. Yeah, that might be a little bit too small. And let's zoom in. Let me press Control+. So we're going to pretend that there's lighting up here. So there's a little like a can light in the ceiling. Let's make this a little bit bigger. And what I'll do is I'll get it set up so that I can make a single click. I'll come down a little bit more. We'll make this a little bit bigger. And it's not showing. Let's put it all the way up on top of everything. And I love it when things don't work the way they're supposed to. I'm going to change it back to normal so you can see this happen as I create it, and then we'll convert it over. It may need more of a background to show up here. So let me let's come back in. We'll make this a little bit bigger. And so what I'm doing is I'm kind of mimicking what's happening as the light grows toward the bottom. Okay. I may need to clip that a little bit, so I can come in here on my background. We don't want that spilling out over. Again, we're on the lighting layer. I can press delete, and that just kind of clips it for where that wall is. Likewise, I could clip it for the floor. About like that. But this is way too yellow. So that's where if we change this and use our soft light, we should get it. Yeah, the problem is that it's not casting on anything because I don't have a texture behind here. So let's add a texture on that wall. So let's go File, Place Embedded. And I need a concrete texture. I already have some on my flash drive, so we'll just go, or excuse me, from my OneDrive. So we'll just go with one that I already have. But I would go out and I would find a collage texture. And there's a piece of concrete. A little bit too big. Let me press Control minus. Let's shrink this down a little bit. I want about 3 levels there. I'm using the arrow keys to kind of fine tune this a bit. Shrink this down just a little bit more. Yeah, right about there. Okay, so now I need to clip this. So let's turn it off for a second. I'm going to go on my lines layer, and we will, actually, I'm just going to select this whole piece. So I'm actually going to temporarily get rid of those windows just so that this illustration works better. And then I'll turn back on my little concrete here, and I'm going to click on the Add Layer Mask, which is going to clip my concrete. Now, if I move that below the lighting layer, we're going to see that soft light casting a shadow. So I can do the same thing on the lighting layer. Let's come back here. We'll go back to my paintbrush. I need to make the size smaller. So we kind of start small. Start here, and we move our way down, and we jump up. Jump up a little bit more. Jump up a little bit more. And that looks like we've got our lights. Now, I need to kind of clean this up a little bit. So again, I'm going to come in here, and we'll delete the part that went over the edge. Likewise, we'll come over here, and we'll delete the part that went over the edge there. And that's mimicking the lighting. If it ends up being too strong, we can, of course, change that opacity down to be a little bit less, maybe like something like that. And now we're showing what it would look like with lighting on the inside. This is a little bit like I used to have windows there, so it should really look more like windows, but I wanted to show you that part of the lighting. My view doesn't really work well with lighting because I have it all glass on that side. So just a different strategy, but I wanted to make sure that I showed you that as well. So the last component of a section that's very, very important is making sure to add a person for scale. So remember way back when we cut out silhouettes, we're going to use one of those. So I'm going to go to File and then Place Embedded. And you should have one. If you don't have one, you can look online for one. And I'm going to go into my folder for, I believe it was exercise 107. Yeah, that sounds good. Let's see what I got. I don't really need somebody running. So let's use this person. There we go, the man standing. Let's use him. And I'll go to Place. And there he is. I want this person to be much smaller. So I'm going to shrink him down so that he is an appropriate height in this building. So getting the scale right is important. So understanding how tall the person is versus how tall the space is starts to matter. And we also want to make sure that he's all the way down, standing on the ground. So let's put him right about there. I think he needs to be a little bit taller. Whoops, come on. A little bit taller, right about there. So this is giving us a sense of scale. Now, to me, he looks a little funny because everything else is black. So maybe he needs to end up being more black as well. So let's change his color. So I'll go up to layer, new adjustment layer. We're going to do a levels adjustment on him. And I'm going to tie it to the layer. So let's go to layer, create clipping mask, or press Control-Alt-G. And then we're going to change this so that he becomes more black. There he is in black. So I'm just dropping that value down. And now you can see that silhouette. I'm a fan of in sections using silhouettes rather than full color, but again, that's just an option depending. We could add another person, so I could go to File, Place Embedded. And let's see. Let's use this one. And we'll drop this down. Right? I can use my other person for a little bit of a scale. Make her a little bit smaller. Maybe about like that. And then let's put her outside. And again, same thing, we want to make sure she's sitting down on that ground plane. And then let's also add a levels adjustment for her to make her black because she's not being seen at all against the background. So let's go to layer, new adjustment layer. Uh-oh, come on. Maybe I have to commit to the size first. There we go. Let's go to layer, new adjustment layer. And again, we're going to do levels. I'm going to tie those together, Control-Alt-G, or layer, create clipping mask. There it is. And we're going to pull this white all the way over. That was incorrect, sorry. Pull the black. It's this white all the way over. Wrong one. There you go. And now she shows up as well. So again, we're always trying to get the sense of scale correct for the building. So we have the people that have been established. Actually, she looks a little bit small. So I might come back here. Let's go to layer, or excuse me, edit, free transform. And let's make her just a little bit bigger. There we go. And now we have her established as well. So people are always something that's very important because it gives a good sense of scale in your building. Okay, so I want to make sure today that you're adding people into your section. So let me press Control-0 and zoom out. And now we're seeing the whole section view. So when you're done, you're going to export this as a PNG or as a JPEG. And then you'll turn it into Canvas as part of this exercise. You can choose to use this once you've created it as part of your assignment 106, assuming it turns out the way that you want. Okay, so we're done slightly early, a few minutes early. Remember that this week is all about portfolios and making sure that you're getting ready and getting things wrapped up. If you have any questions, come to any of the sessions. So don't feel like you just have to come to your check-in session. If you have a question or you want to go over something, come to one of the other sessions. It's not a problem. We'll try to get through absolutely everybody as we go forward. All right. So with that, unless anybody has any major questions, I'll let you all go.